Get out of my garage right now." Andrew's voice cut through the air like a knife. My hands were shaking as I held the wrench I'd been using for 30 years. He was standing there in my garage, using my tools, my workspace, like he owned the place. And the worst part hadn't even happened yet. His girlfriend Ashley ran into the garage. Instead of telling Andrew to show some respect to his father, she started clapping. Yes, clapping like she was at some kind of show. "That's right, babe. Finally someone put him in his place," she said, with that smug smile I'd grown to hate. "My name is George Mitchell. I'm 59 years old, and for the last 3 years, I've been living a quiet hell in my own home. Let me tell you how I got to that moment of complete humiliation, and more importantly, how I made them pay for it. When Andrew brought Ashley home 3 years ago, I thought my son had finally found someone who'd make him happy. She was 29, pretty, with that kind of confidence that comes from never having to work for anything. Too much confidence, if you ask me. At our first dinner, she barely looked at me. She only talked to Andrew, constantly touching his arm, laughing way too loud at his jokes that weren't even funny. She treated me like I was furniture in my own house, but I kept quiet because I wanted my son to be happy. I'd raised him alone after his mother, Sarah, passed away from cancer 8 years ago. Those were dark times, some of the hardest in my life. Sarah was my anchor, my best friend, and losing her nearly broke me. But I had Andrew to think about, even though he was already 27 and on his own by then. Andrew had been doing well for himself, working as a software engineer in Cleveland, making around $78,000 a year. He had his own apartment, seemed to have his life together. Then the pandemic hit in 2020, and his company downsized. He got laid off along with half his department. That's when he showed up at my door with a suitcase and that awkward smile he always had when he needed something. "Dad, it's just temporary," he said, standing on my front porch like a lost kid. "Just until I get back on my feet. Maybe a few months tops." I had a 3-bedroom ranch house in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. It was too big for just me since Sarah died, but I couldn't bring myself to sell it. Too many memories. "Of course, son," I said, opening the door wide. "This will always be your home. If I'd known that temporary would become 3.5 years of pure misery, I would have locked the door right then and there." The first few months weren't too bad. Andrew was actively looking for work, sending out resumes, going to interviews. He was stressed about money, worried about his future, but he was still the son I knew. We'd watch football together on Sundays, work on projects around the house. It felt like old times, almost like having family again. Then Ashley entered the picture. She just showed up one day in March 2021, about 6 months after Andrew moved in. No discussion, no asking my permission. She just appeared at my door with 2 suitcases and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be George," she said, walking past me into my house like she'd always lived there. "Andrew's told me so much about you. All good things, I hope," I said, trying to be polite while my gut told me something was wrong. "Oh, definitely," she replied, already making herself at home on my couch. "He says you're very accommodating." That should have been my first red flag. Ashley claimed to work in marketing for some startup downtown, but within a week it was clear she spent most of her time on her phone, taking selfies and posting on social media. She called it building her personal brand and developing her influencer platform. What it really meant was lying around my house all day while I went to work. See, everyone thought I was just some retired construction worker living on Social Security and my dead wife's pension. That's what I let them think. I'd spent 35 years in construction, starting as a laborer right out of high school and working my way up to foreman. It was honest work, hard work, and I was proud of it. But after Sarah died and I got that $200,000 life insurance payout, I decided to try something different. I'd always been good with my hands, good with engines. Growing up, my dad taught me how to fix anything with wheels, and I'd been tinkering with cars since I was 12. So I took that insurance money and bought a rundown auto repair shop on the edge of town. A place called Jerry's Garage that old Jerry was looking to sell so he could retire to Florida. That was 8 years ago. Today I own Mitchell's Auto Service, 4 locations around central Ohio. 2 full-service repair shops, 1 specialty restoration garage for classic cars, and a parts warehouse that supplies other shops. Last year, we brought in $1.6 million in revenue. After all expenses, payroll, and reinvestment, My personal take was $240,000. Not bad for an old construction worker, right? But I kept it quiet. I still drove my 2010 Ford F-150. Still lived in the same house. Still dressed like a regular guy who worked with his hands. I had my reasons for keeping the business secret, and they were about to become very important. At first, Ashley was just annoying. She'd make little comments about the house being dated and suggest improvements that would cost thousands. She'd complain about my cooking, saying I used too much salt or not enough spice. Small things that I could overlook because I didn't want to cause problems for Andrew. Then she quit her marketing job, just like that, 6 months after moving into my house. "I'm burned out," she announced one morning over breakfast. "The corporate world is so toxic. I need to focus on my influencer career full time." Her influencer career consisted of posting photos of herself at coffee shops and writing captions about living your best life. As far as I could tell, she had maybe 500 followers, half of whom were probably fake accounts. But Andrew supported her decision completely. "Dad, Ashley's got real talent. He'd tell me when I questioned whether quitting a paying job was smart. She just needs time to build her audience. This could really take off." Meanwhile, I was paying for everything. Groceries, utilities, cable, internet. Ashley ate my food, used my electricity to charge her ring lights for her photo shoots, and never once offered to contribute a dime. When I suggested maybe she could help with expenses, Andrew would get defensive. "She's working, Dad. Building a business isn't easy. You wouldn't understand." Wouldn't understand? I'd built $1 million business from scratch, but sure, I wouldn't understand. The disrespect started small and grew like a cancer. Ashley would give me orders disguised as requests. "George, could you pick up my dry cleaning? I'm just so busy today." "George, my friends are coming over tonight. Could you maybe stay in your room so we can have some privacy?" My room, in my own house. Andrew not only allowed this, he encouraged it. If I showed any resistance, he'd pull me aside and give me lectures about how I needed to be more supportive of Ashley's dreams. How I was from a different generation and didn't understand how relationships worked nowadays. "She's going to be my wife someday, Dad," he told me one night after Ashley had sent me to the store to buy her some specific brand of organic tea that cost $20 for a tiny box. "I need to know you're going to support her like family." Family. That word used to mean something to me. The breaking point came on Ashley's 30th birthday last month. She'd been planning this party for weeks, talking about it nonstop like it was some kind of royal coronation. I figured they'd have it in the living room or maybe rent a hall somewhere. I never imagined she'd take over my garage. That Saturday morning, I was out there doing what I always did on weekends, working on my truck. Just a simple oil change, nothing fancy. I had my tools laid out, my work clothes on, completely in my element. The garage was my sanctuary, the one place in the house where I still felt like myself. Then Ashley and her mother, Patricia, came barging in with bags full of party decorations. They didn't knock, didn't ask permission, just waltzed right in like they owned the place. "Today I'm going to show everyone that this is my house now," Ashley announced, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. She was practically glowing with excitement, like a kid on Christmas morning. Patricia laughed that awful cackle of hers. "Good for you, honey. It's about time someone took charge around here." She shot me a look of pure contempt, like I was some kind of pest that needed to be exterminated. I watched in horror as they started moving my tools around, clearing space for tables and chairs. Ashley grabbed my socket set, the one I'd been collecting for 30 years, and shoved it into a corner like it was junk. She took my work rags, the ones I used to keep my hands clean, and tossed them in the garbage. "I'm having my birthday party out here," she declared, not asking, just stating it as fact. "It'll be so much more authentic than inside. Very industrial chic." Industrial chic. My life's work reduced to a party theme. I tried to speak up. "Excuse me, Ashley, I was in the middle of working on my truck. Maybe we could—" She cut me off with that tone you'd use on a disobedient dog. "George, today is my birthday and I'm using this garage for my party. Could you do us a favor?" She pointed toward the door with her finger, like she was shooing away a fly. Something burned in my chest, a fire I hadn't felt in years. This was my garage. I'd organized every tool, installed every shelf, poured the concrete floor myself when the old one cracked. I'd spent countless hours in here over the years, fixing cars, building things, thinking through problems. After Sarah died, this garage was where I came to grieve, to remember, to heal. But I did what I always did. I swallowed my pride, forced a smile, and walked away. "Sure thing," I mumbled. "It's your day." As I headed for the door, I heard Patricia whisper to Ashley, just loud enough for me to catch every word. "You finally put him in his place." This house needed a real owner. They both laughed as I walked out of my own garage with my head down and my heart shattered. I went to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the pictures on my nightstand. Sarah smiling on our wedding day. Andrew graduating from college, so proud and full of potential. Where had it all gone wrong? For the next 2 hours, I listened to them turning my workspace into their party venue. I heard them moving my equipment, rearranging my storage, throwing away things they decided were too ugly for their photos. Every bang and crash felt like a punch to the gut. Around 2 p.m., the guests started arriving. Ashley's whole family showed up. Her, Father Carl with his big mouth and bigger belly, her 2 sisters, Karen and Nancy, plus a bunch of friends I'd never seen before. They parked in my driveway, walked through my house, and headed straight for my garage like they owned the place. Nobody even acknowledged me. I might as well have been invisible. I stayed in my room like a prisoner, listening to their laughter and music drifting up through the floor. The smell of barbecue wafted through the vents. They were using my grill too, of course. Everything in my house was fair game for their party. Around 6 p.m., Andrew knocked on my door. "Dad, what are you doing hiding up here? Come down to the party." I looked at my son, this 35-year-old man I barely recognized anymore. "Andrew, she kicked me out of my own garage." He sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Dad, please don't be dramatic. It's her birthday. Let her enjoy it." He paused, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. "Besides, she's been really stressed about her career lately. She needs this, her career, taking selfies and posting inspirational quotes she found on Pinterest." I went downstairs because I didn't want to look like the villain in my own home. I put on a clean shirt and forced a smile as I walked into the chaos. My garage was packed with people I didn't know, eating food I didn't buy, celebrating someone who treated me like garbage. The worst part was seeing my tools displayed around the room like decorations. My torque wrench was being used as a conversation piece. Someone had my vintage level balanced on a stack of beer cans. 30 years of careful organization turned into party props. I stood by the entrance like a ghost, watching everyone have fun in my space. Ashley was holding court in the center, telling some story about her latest content creation strategies while everyone listened like she was sharing the secrets of the universe. Then came time for cake. Everyone moved inside to the dining room, and I followed like a lost dog. But when I got there, every chair was taken, every single one. I stood there feeling my face burn with embarrassment as 20 people pretended not to notice me. Carl Parker looked up at me with that smug grin of his. "Looks like there's no room for you, George. Why don't you eat in the kitchen? That's where you belong anyway." The whole room erupted in laughter. My son said nothing, just sat there smiling like his father's humiliation was the funniest thing in the world. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Henry Rodriguez, my accountant for the past 15 years. Henry had been Sarah's accountant first, back when she was managing the books for a small dental practice. After she died, he became my financial advisor and helped me navigate the business world when I bought that first auto shop. "George, urgent. Need to talk about house documents. Andrew tried to refinance using fake papers. Call me immediately." My blood went cold. I read the message 3 times to make sure I understood. Andrew, my own son, had tried to refinance my house using fake documents. My house, the one I'd bought 25 years ago, with money I'd earned breaking my back in construction. I slipped out of the dining room without anyone noticing. Why would they notice? I was invisible in my own home. I went upstairs to my bedroom, locked the door, and called Henry immediately. "George, thank God you called back so quickly." His voice sounded worried, which wasn't like Henry. He was usually calm about everything, the kind of guy who could find solutions to any problem. "Henry, what the hell is going on?" I asked, even though part of me already knew the answer. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from First National Bank. They were asking about some refinancing documents that I had supposedly certified for your property. Documents I've never seen in my life, George. Someone forged my signature and submitted papers claiming you'd given Andrew power of attorney over the house. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Are you sure it was Andrew? His signature is all over the paperwork. They tried to take out a $135,000 loan against your house, George. Thank God the bank got suspicious when the amounts didn't match their records and called me to verify. I stopped everything immediately and opened an investigation. $135,000. That was about a third of my house's value. My son had tried to steal a third of my property without my knowledge, using fake documents. It was fraud, plain and simple. There's more, Henry continued, and his tone got even more serious. I did some digging after this came to light. Andrew and Ashley are drowning in debt, George. Credit cards, personal loans, and get this. He lost over $60,000 day trading cryptocurrency last year. They owe about $180,000 total. Everything started making sense. Ashley's constant pressure for me to upgrade the house. The way they both looked at me sometimes, like I was an obstacle to something. The whispered conversations that stopped whenever I walked into a room. Henry, I need you to put alerts on everything. All my accounts, all my properties. I don't want them to be able to touch anything without me knowing. Already done. And George, I need to tell you, this is serious criminal fraud. With the evidence I have, we could press charges. Andrew could go to prison. After I hung up, I sat on my bed staring at the wall. Downstairs, I could hear them still celebrating, laughing and having a grand time, while I processed the fact that my own son was trying to steal my house. That night, after all the guests left and the house was finally quiet, I heard Andrew and Ashley talking in their bedroom. My room was right next to theirs, and the walls weren't that thick. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. Their voices just carried. I don't understand why the bank rejected the loan, Ashley was saying. Those documents Timothy made looked perfect. Timothy. That would be Timothy Anderson, Andrew's friend. From college, who now worked for some shady financial consulting firm. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Someone at the bank must have gotten suspicious, Andrew replied. But don't worry, we'll figure out another way. We need that money, Ashley. The credit card companies are threatening to sue, and if we don't pay soon, we're going to lose everything. Your father just sitting in this big house all by himself, Ashley said with disgust in her voice. It's such a waste. This property is worth $400,000 easy. We could pay off everything and still have money left over to start fresh somewhere else. I know, babe. I'm working on a plan. Trust me, I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about the son I'd raised, the boy who used to help me fix cars in the garage, who'd cried when his mother died and promised me we'd always stick together. What had happened to that kid? But something strange occurred to me in those dark hours. Instead of just feeling hurt and betrayed, I started feeling something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anger. Not the explosive kind that makes you do stupid things, but cold, calculated anger that makes you think clearly. They thought I was just some dumb old man they could push around and steal from. They had no idea who they were really dealing with. The next morning, I started planning my counterattack. First, I called Henry back. I want you to install security cameras in the house, hidden ones. I want to record everything they say and do. George, are you sure about this? Once we go down this road, I'm sure. They want to play games? Let's see how good they really are at it. Next, I started changing my daily routine. I stopped doing things for Andrew and Ashley. No more cooking their meals. No more paying for their cable TV or groceries. When Ashley complained about the Wi-Fi being slow, I told her she was welcome to upgrade the service if she wanted to pay for it. What's wrong with you lately? Andrew asked one evening when I refused to drive Ashley to some appointment across town. You're acting weird. Just getting older, son, I replied with a smile. Can't do everything I used to do. But inside, I was just getting started. 2 weeks later, Henry called with an update. They're trying again, George. Different notary this time, in Kentucky. But my contact at the courthouse tipped me off. Let them try, I said. I want them to dig their hole even deeper. The cameras I'd installed captured everything. Andrew meeting with Timothy Anderson in my living room, planning their second fraud attempt. Ashley on the phone with her father, begging for more time to pay back money they'd borrowed. Both of them discussing how they were going to convince me to move into a nice retirement community so they could sell the house. The evidence was piling up, and I was ready to use it. Ashley's family was planning a big dinner the following Saturday. Ashley had been bragging to everyone about some major announcement she was going to make. I had a pretty good idea what that announcement was going to be. Henry, I said, I need you at that dinner. Bring everything. Saturday came, and I got dressed in my best suit, not the work clothes they were used to seeing me in. When Andrew and Ashley saw me, they both looked confused. "Why are you so dressed up, Dad?" Andrew asked. "Thought I should look nice for Ashley's big announcement," I replied. The drive to Carl Parker's house was tense. Ashley kept checking her appearance in the mirror, probably rehearsing her victory speech. When we arrived, the whole family was there. Carl, Patricia, Ashley's sisters, Karen and Nancy, plus some family friends. Nobody really talked to me when I walked in. I was still invisible to them, which was perfect for what I had planned. Dinner started with the usual small talk. Carl bragging about his used car lot, Ashley's sisters gossiping about their neighbors. Then, after the main course, Carl stood up and tapped his wine glass. "Family and friends, I want to make an important announcement," he said with a huge grin. "As you all know, Ashley and Andrew have been working hard to improve their financial situation, and I'm proud to say they've finally found the perfect solution." He looked directly at me with triumph in his eyes. Andrew has decided to take over his father's house. It's a very mature decision that will help them pay off their debts and start the life they deserve. Applause erupted around the table. The whole family clapped like it was the most wonderful news they'd ever heard. Andrew stood up, taking Ashley's hand like they'd just gotten engaged. "Thank you all for your support," he said, "and I especially want to thank my dad for being so understanding about this transition." They were all looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to nod and smile like a good little old man who knew his place. Instead, I slowly stood up. "There's something you all need to know," I said, my voice clear and firm. "That house isn't for sale. It can't be sold. Because that house doesn't belong to Andrew. It belongs to me. It's in my name, and it's always been in my name." Confused murmurs swept around the table. Carl frowned. "Well, yes, technically it's in your name. But Andrew is your son. It's practically the same thing." "No, Carl, it's not the same thing at all. And there's something else none of you know." I pulled out my phone and called Henry. "You can come in now." The front door opened and Henry walked into the dining room, carrying his leather briefcase. Everyone looked confused and nervous. "This is Henry Rodriguez, my accountant and lawyer," I announced. Henry opened his briefcase and started laying out documents on the table. Property deeds, financial statements, business licenses, photographs of my auto shops. "For the last 8 years," I continued, "while you've all been treating me like some washed-up old construction worker, I've been building something significant." I pointed to the documents spread across the table. "These are the property deeds for 4 auto repair shops. Mitchell's Auto Service. Maybe you've heard of them. There's one on Route 33, another on High Street, plus my restoration shop and parts warehouse." I saw Ashley's sister Karen gasp. She'd probably driven past my shops 100 times. All mine. I own every one of them. Last year, my shops brought in $1.6 million in revenue. After expenses and reinvestment, my personal income was $240,000. The silence was absolutely deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. I also own the building where my main shop operates, plus 2 rental properties in town. My investment accounts total about $600,000. I looked at Henry. "What's my total net worth, Henry?" "Approximately $2.5 million, Mr. Mitchell." Ashley's fork clattered to her plate. Carl's mouth hung open like a fish gasping for air. Andrew had gone completely white. "Impossible," Patricia stammered. "You're just a construction worker." "I was a construction worker," I corrected her, "for 35 years. Honest work that taught me the value of earning what you have. But I was never just anything. The problem is, none of you ever bothered to really know me." I took out my phone and played one of the recorded conversations. Andrew and Ashley's voices filled the room, planning to steal my house, discussing how I was too old and stupid to stop them, laughing about putting me in a nursing home. "I have hours of recordings like this," I said calmly. "Every conversation, every plan, every lie. Henry has copies of the forged documents you submitted to the bank. We have enough evidence to send both of you to prison for fraud." Andrew's face completely crumpled. "Dad, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain, son. You tried to steal my house. Twice. You conspired with Timothy Anderson to commit bank fraud. You planned to put me in a nursing home so you could sell my property and pay your gambling debts." I stood up and looked around the table at their shocked faces. But I'm not going to press charges. Do you know why? Nobody answered. Because despite everything you've done, Andrew is still my son. And maybe, just maybe, this will teach you both something about respect and consequences. I headed toward the door, but turned back one final time. Andrew, Ashley, you have 2 weeks to find your own place. Your debt problems? I'll pay them off. Not to help you, but so you can't use money as an excuse for being terrible people anymore. You're going to learn what it means to earn a living with dignity. I left them sitting there in complete shock. Henry followed me out with all the documents. 2 weeks later, Andrew and Ashley moved into a small apartment across town. Ashley's influencer dreams died when she realized she'd have to get a real job. She's working at a grocery store now, and from what I hear, she's actually not terrible at it. Andrew kept his software job, but now he reports his expenses to Henry every month. No more crypto trading, no more living beyond his means. The best part? 3 months after they moved out, Ashley left him. Turns out she wasn't interested in dating someone who couldn't buy her designer bags. Andrew came by last month to apologize. Really apologize. Not just say sorry to get something from me. Dad, I was an idiot, he said, sitting in my living room like a guest instead of acting like he owned the place. I let money and Ashley turn me into someone I hate. Son, I told him, this was never about the money. It was about respect, about remembering that I'm your father, not your ATM machine. We're rebuilding our relationship now. It's slow work, but there's hope. He's learning what it means to earn things instead of expecting them to be handed over. Sometimes he stops by on Sundays, and we work on projects in the garage, my garage, like we used to when he was a kid. As for me, I'm not hiding anymore. I drive a newer truck now, nothing fancy, just something reliable. My neighbors know about my business success, and I've started mentoring young mechanics, teaching them the trade and how to treat people with dignity. The moral of my story is simple. Respect isn't something you give people just because they share your DNA. Respect is earned through actions, through character, through how you treat others when you think nobody's watching. I'm George Mitchell. I'm 59 years old. I built a business empire while my own family thought I was nobody. I survived my son's betrayal and came out stronger. And if my story helps even one person stand up for themselves and demand the respect they deserve, then every moment of pain was worth it. Because at the end of the day, how others treat you says everything about them and nothing about you. But how you respond, that's what defines who you really are. Sometimes the people who underestimate you the most are the ones who need to learn the hardest lessons, and giving them that education, even when it hurts, is the greatest gift you can give both them and yourself. True wealth isn't measured by what you own, but by the respect you command through your actions, and the legacy you build through teaching others that dignity isn't negotiable, no matter who's trying to take it from you.